Good morning, guys. Welcome back to Zim Reads. I'm your host, Zim, and today we are jumping into another National Book Award long-listed book from the year 2020. I am going to attempt to read all 10 of these books, curated and culled from a list of, I think, 350 plus books. That's a lot of books. That's a lot of books as a judge that you have to read. I don't know how they do it. I'm going to trust the panel. I'm going to trust the judges. Scrutiny aside, there are 10 books longlisted for this prestigious award, the National Book Award. I'm going to try to read all 10 of them. I've read 30%. That's 3 of the 10. That would be Shuggie Bain, and you can see my review here. Number 2 would be Interior Chinatown. You can see my review here. And the book that I'm going to review for you today. We're making good progress. Before we jump in, I want to mention something important that I recognize and realize that a mere mentioning of this is not enough, but it needs to be mentioned. What happened with the case in Kentucky with Breonna Taylor is absolutely heartbreaking and representative of, from my opinion, a very flawed and broken justice system and law enforcement system, and it should not be this way. I think of the words of Bob Dylan, one of my heroes, couldn't help but make me feel ashamed to live in a land where justice is a game. He's talking about the sham trial of Reuben the Hurricane Carter, who was falsely accused and imprisoned for a murder and spent, I think, decades in prison as an innocent man. Couldn't help but make me feel ashamed to live in a land where justice is a game. I feel that today about Breonna Taylor and the conclusion that the Attorney General's office came to, that none of the police officers would be charged with the murder of Breonna Taylor, the unjust murder of Breonna Taylor. It is not enough to merely mention these things. It's not enough to merely post about these things. We cannot let that be this weird placating of the consciousness around these issues. I hope that her family is finding some kind of peace and some kind of hope somewhere, but I am sure that they are not only in deep grief, but in deep frustration and agony over the way their daughter's death is being handled. We need things to change in America. We need things to change in the world. We need things to change.
He'd told her once that California got its name from a dark-skinned queen. He'd seen a mural of her in San Francisco. She hadn't believed him until he showed her a photograph he'd taken, and there the Dark Queen was, seated at the top of the ceiling, flanked by a tribe of female warriors looking so regal and imposing that Jude was heartbroken to discover that she wasn't even real. Like all colonizers, the conquistadors wrote their fiction into reality, their myths transforming into history. What remained was California, a place that still felt like a mythical island. She was in the middle of the ocean, sealed away from everyone she'd once known, floating.
Have you ever wanted to live a different life? Have you ever wanted to pass over from the current life you're living to another life that you know will be more privileged, will be easier, will give you more opportunity, and will give you the chance to leave behind everything in your previous life that has held you down, has weighed you down, has kept you stuck? That's what the book we're going to review today is about. The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. Longlisted for the National Book Award in 2020. Look at this thing. It's beautiful. Look at those colors. It's soft. It's nice. I really like this cover. Oh, yes, of course. It was also a Good Morning America book club, a GMA book club pick. The Vanishing Half. #1 New York Times bestseller. I mean, this thing has been splashing. Can you say cannonball? This is Brit Bennett's sophomore novel. Her first novel, The Mothers, did very well as well. I have not read it, so let's get into the work. Weren't expecting that move. Okay, I'm messing up the dust cover. So I bought it, and we're gonna talk about what I think about it. Quick synopsis. What is The Vanishing Half about? The Vanishing Half follows the story of Desiree and Stella Vines, as well as, in some parts, the story of their daughters, Kennedy Sanders, and Jude Vines. No, Jude's last name is different because of her father. What is her last name? Winston? Jude Winston, yeah. There we go. This story follows Desiree Vines, Stella Vines, who are twin sisters living in the town of Mallard, Louisiana. You heard me right. Mallard like the duck. Mallard, Louisiana. I don't know if it's a real place. Could be a fictitious place that Brit Bennett conjured out of her imagination. Like Harry Potter performing something at Hogwarts. Like Harry Potter working his magic. Brit Bennett may have conjured up an entire little town in Louisiana. It is a town of black people of African American descent who are extremely light-skinned, so light-skinned they could pass for white people. We step into the story of Desiree Vines and Stella Vines. They leave home. They leave. They want to get out of this small Mallard town. They move to New Orleans to make a new life for themselves. And this is where things get a little interesting. Stella begins to pretend that she is white because she can pass for white. It's called passing over. So she passes over into the role, the life, the experience, the body of a white woman. Stella Vines becomes white. She gets a job as a secretary in an office. She lies and says she's white and gets hired, and she starts working for Mr. Sanders. Now Stella realizes, wow, this is a whole different life that I could live as a white person. And actually her and her boss start to fall in love. They do fall in love. He asks her to move to Boston with him, and she says yes. And this is where Stella and Desiree split. But Desiree doesn't even know it's happening. Stella abandons Desiree and heads off to Boston. Desiree doesn't hear from her, doesn't know where she is. Their lives have diverged. That sets the precedent for this story. We later follow for a while Jude, who is the daughter of Desiree, and Kennedy, who is the daughter of Stella. And we watch all these dynamics swirl in this blender of Brit Bennett's imagination and come out in the form of this colorful book called The Vanishing Half. I was excited to read this book because I heard the critical acclaim. I saw the cannonball splash. I saw how big that splash was, and I thought, cannonball, splash, The Vanishing Half. Brit Bennett, I'm buying your book. I don't really know how to talk about how I feel about Brit Bennett's The Vanishing Half. I was really expecting this to just bowl me over. I was expecting Brit Bennett's novel to expose something in me. I was expecting... the premise is so interesting. The premise is creative and interesting. I think that Brit Bennett explores the race conversation from a different angle. And that is interesting, and that is unique. You have this black woman who is light enough physically to pass as a white woman, and she chooses to. And you have her twin who looks exactly like her and does not choose to. And what happens to someone who does that? What happens to their consciousness? What happens to their worldview? How do things change when a person does that? How do things change for the family that person leaves behind? Because Stella Vines is forced to leave everything behind. She chooses to leave everything behind, really. She leaves everything behind, including her twin, for the privilege that she acquires by being white in America. How does she travel that road, that lonely road, where she leaves everything and everyone behind and becomes someone new? Desiree, her twin, who Stella abandoned in New Orleans, ends up marrying a very dark-skinned person and has a child with him named Jude, who is extremely dark-skinned. So you have that dynamic now, where this light-skinned African-American has this very dark-skinned daughter, and bringing her back to the town of Mallard, where there are it's this town of African Americans that are all light-skinned, light enough to pass for white, that now has this daughter that is extremely dark, and they themselves do not accept her for her dark skin. So you have that interesting racial element. And you wonder, is Brit Bennett exploring something through the metaphor of this story? You expect that this is the stage where the themes of this book, these complicated themes that you can kind of see brewing in the distance and looming and beginning to approach, you wonder, are these the metaphors that Brit Bennett is painting and using to explore these themes of the racial conversation? What is racism? What is privilege? Is there racism within one race? What is the impact of racism in America? And at the same time, if it's not about the color of your skin, because these African Americans are light enough to look white, if it's not about how dark their skin is, then what is it about? You wonder, is Brit Bennett going to explore these themes? Desiree and Stella, these twins, one goes off to be white, one ends up remaining in Mallard and living in Mallard with her very dark daughter. Stella goes off, marries a very well-to-do, privileged white man. They have a daughter who, of course, would look extremely white. Then the next generation down. And you expect Brit Bennett to use all of these complicated pieces that she has presented. She's put these cards on the table, and you're expecting her to explore these themes with all of these cards on the table. And unfortunately, I don't think she ever does. I am not holding The Vanishing Half to a standard that it has not held itself to. I don't believe that this book explores the themes that it seeks to explore. The premise is interesting. What is privilege? What is racism? What is family? You know, these are all premises that you can see surface in these elements. Brit Bennett starts the book out with Desiree Vines returning home. We don't know where she has been. She has a new daughter who the town immediately identifies as the darkest child they've ever seen. And she's been gone for a long time. And everyone is surprised to see her. And that's the way the book starts out. What a way to start a book, with that opening. That's a great opening. That intrigues the reader, that draws us in, that invests us right away, and it makes us wonder what happened. Why did she leave? Why is she coming back? What happened while she was gone? Who is this town? Will they accept her? Will they reject her? How long is she going to stay? All of those things surface right away for the reader as they enter into an opening like that. That is the way to open a book. The next big chunk of the book, I think, becomes this narrative of coincidences, descriptions that are just too obvious. For me, Brit Bennett is missing something in a lot of her writing. There are moments in this book that are very beautiful. Very beautiful. And so I can see Brit Bennett becoming a force to be reckoned with, because there are moments that really, she just hits the nail on the head. She is writing in her element. But there are a lot of moments that the narrative is extremely, it's like a TV dinner. That's what it's like, a TV dinner. It's almost pot roast, but it was microwaved with a plastic film over it and is sitting in this cardboard tray. It's almost pot roast, but it's really salty. I don't know. The ending to this is when she really starts to find her voice, I think. I think she writes the ending very beautifully. I think Brit Bennett is missing the mark through this book, unfortunately. I think that she taps into it at times, and that's almost more frustrating. You read some books where the author never taps into it, and you can just very easily say, okay, I understand what I feel about this book. I was near tears towards the end of the book because of the writing. That said, though, I was kind of near tears through the majority of the book because of how agonizing it was to slog through. I really thought this book would never end, and it's only like 330 pages. It took me a long time to finish this one. I was just like, oh my God, this is just agony. That is what I think about The Vanishing Half, longlisted for the National Book Award. Do I think that this will win the National Book Award? I really hope it doesn't. My number one right now is Shuggie Bain, then Interior Chinatown, and then The Vanishing Half. I just found that it was missing magic that I saw Brit Bennett conjure in portions, but miss through the majority. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to say about this. What's next on the National Book Award long list 2020 for Zim Reads? We will be reading The Index of Self-Destructive Acts by Christopher Beha? I don't know how to say it. B-E-H-A. This is next. This somewhat chunky boy is next for the National Book Award long list reading. If you enjoyed this video, leave a comment down below, hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. Please tell your friends. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate you guys reading. Go support local libraries. Go support local bookstores. Go support Black Lives Matter. That's it. That's it. That's it. I got nothing else. I got nothing else. I think I'm done.